They handed me the invitation like it was an afterthought. Thin cream paper, gold edges, my name printed smaller than everyone else's. "Don't be late this time, Wendy," my mother said without looking up from her phone. "We'll need you early to help set things up." I nodded. Of course they would. For 32 years, I had never been a guest in my parents' house. I had always been the help. I stood there for a moment longer, waiting, just in case there was something else. Something softer. Something that sounded like love. There wasn't. My younger sister Megan's laughter drifted in from the living room, bright and effortless, like it always had been. She was showing my parents pictures from her latest vacation, some island I couldn't pronounce, funded by a job she got through one of my father's connections. "Oh, look at you," my mother cooed. "You look absolutely stunning." I stepped out quietly before anyone noticed I was still there. That was how it always worked. Megan existed in color. I existed in the background. The anniversary party was supposed to be a celebration, 40 years of marriage. My mother had been talking about it for months like it was a royal event, a private venue, catered food, live music, imported flowers, everything perfect, everything impressive, everything for appearances. And me? I was assigned a list. 3 days before the event, my mother sent me a message. No greeting, no punctuation, just instructions. Pick up the cake, confirm the seating chart, call the florist, bring extra serving trays, arrive by noon. I read it twice, then locked my phone. There was a time when I would have responded immediately. "Yes, Mom. Of course, Mom. I'll take care of it." But that time had been slowly dying for the past 3 years. Quietly. Secretly. The night before the anniversary, I sat at my small kitchen table, surrounded by printed photographs. Some were framed, some were still in sleeves, others were spread out like pieces of a life I had been building in silence. A life no one in my family knew about, or cared to know. I picked up one photo, a black and white portrait of an elderly woman holding her husband's hand. The way their fingers intertwined, the softness in their eyes. It had won me my first real recognition. A small gallery downtown had offered me a contract after seeing it. 3 years of early mornings, late nights, weekend shoots, rejections, learning, growing, all while still being the reliable one. The one who cooked, cleaned, babysat, filed taxes, ran errands, solved problems. The one who never said no. Until now. My phone buzzed. A message from my mother. "Don't forget to steam Megan's dress tomorrow. It wrinkles easily." I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I turned it off. The day of the anniversary arrived warm and bright. The kind of day people describe as perfect. I arrived at the venue at exactly noon, not because I wanted to, because I had been trained to. The hall was already half decorated. Staff moved around efficiently, setting tables, adjusting lighting, arranging flowers. My mother stood in the center, directing everything like a general. "Oh, good, you're here," she said the moment she saw me. "You're late." I checked the time. 12:01. Never mind, just go to the kitchen. They need help plating appetizers." Of course they did. I placed my bag in a corner and walked toward the kitchen without another word. For the next several hours, I worked, carrying trays, adjusting decorations, fixing last-minute problems no one else noticed. At one point, I found myself kneeling on the floor, taping down a loose cable so no one would trip. No one said thank you. No one ever did. Guests began arriving around 6. That's when everything shifted. Suddenly, my mother's tone changed. Her posture straightened. Her smile widened. She became someone else. Someone warm. Someone charming. Someone who looked like the kind of mother people envied. I stood near the back, smoothing out tablecloths, when I heard my name. Wendy! I turned. Megan was walking toward me, glowing in a soft blue dress I had steamed that morning. You missed a spot, she said, pointing to a barely visible crease near her waist. Sorry, I thought, it's fine, she cut in, already distracted. Just fix it quickly before more people arrive. I reached out and adjusted the fabric carefully. She didn't say thank you. She never did either. By the time the event officially began, I hadn't sat down once. I wasn't supposed to. There was no seat for me at the main tables. There never was. I stood near the service area, watching as my parents greeted guests, laughing, hugging, telling stories about their beautiful family. At one point, I heard my mother say, "We're so blessed. Our daughters are everything to us." I almost laughed. Almost. Dinner was served. Speeches began. My father took the microphone first, talking about love, commitment, sacrifice. He spoke about how proud he was of the life they had built, the family they had raised. Then my mother took the stage. She was emotional, dramatic, perfect. She talked about their journey, their struggles, their triumphs. And then she smiled. That's why, she said, her voice bright with excitement, we've decided to celebrate this milestone with something special. The room leaned in. We're taking a family trip to Hawaii. Applause erupted. Cheers, laughter, excitement. I felt a small flicker of something in my chest. Hope. Stupid, quiet hope. For 2 whole weeks, she continued. Just us, relaxing, enjoying life together. People were already congratulating them. What a dream! That sounds incredible. You deserve it. I stood still, waiting for the rest. My mother's eyes scanned the room, and then landed on me. She smiled. But it wasn't the kind of smile that includes you. It was the kind that reminds you where you stand. Of course, she added lightly, someone needs to stay behind and take care of Megan's kids. The room chuckled. A few people glanced at me. I didn't move. And Wendy is so good with them, my mother continued. It just makes sense. More laughter, more nods, more agreement. No one questioned it. No one thought it was strange, because to them, that was my role. That was my place. I felt the room close in around me, the sound fading into something distant and hollow. My hands were steady. My face was calm. But something inside me, something old and quiet, finally broke. I turned and walked toward the exit. No one stopped me. No one noticed. Not yet. Outside, the air was cooler, quieter, real. I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. For a moment, I just held it. Then I opened my email, scrolled, found it. The contract. The gallery had been waiting for my confirmation. 3 days ago, they had sent a final message. We'd love to feature your work in a solo exhibition next month. Please confirm by Friday. Today was Friday. I looked back at the glowing hall through the glass doors, at the life I had been living, at the version of myself I had been trapped inside. Then I looked down at the screen, and I made my choice. My fingers didn't hesitate this time. For years, hesitation had been my default. Every decision filtered through one question. What would they expect me to do? But standing outside that hall, hearing the faint echo of laughter that had never truly included me, something had shifted. I opened a new message. My reply was simple. I accept. I read it once. No explanation, no apology, no delay. Then I pressed send. The moment the message disappeared, a strange stillness settled over me. Not fear, not even relief. Something quieter, something steady. For the first time in my life, I had chosen something without asking for permission. I slipped my phone back into my bag and took a slow breath. Inside, the party was still going. Glasses clinking, music rising, my mother probably moving from table to table, performing her version of happiness. They would expect me to come back in, to keep working, to keep smiling, to keep being useful. I didn't move. Instead, I reached into my bag again, this time for a small envelope I had brought with me. I had written it the night before. I hadn't been sure if I would use it. Now I knew. I walked back inside. No one noticed me re-enter. Of course they didn't. I moved along the edge of the room, past tables filled with people who knew my parents but didn't know me. I passed Megan, who was laughing with a group of guests, her children sitting nearby, already being entertained by someone else. She didn't look at me. I kept walking until I reached the gift table. Dozens of neatly wrapped boxes, cards, flowers. I placed my envelope gently among them. No name on the outside. They would know it was from me. Or maybe they wouldn't. For a brief second, I considered staying, watching how the night unfolded, waiting for someone to notice I was no longer working behind the scenes. But I already knew how that would go. They would call my name, not out of concern, but inconvenience. Where's Wendy? Who's handling this? Why isn't this done? Not because I was missed, because I was needed. There's a difference. I turned and walked out again. This time I didn't look back. The drive home was quiet. No music, no calls, no messages. Just the sound of the road and the steady rhythm of something inside me settling into place. When I reached my apartment, I didn't turn on the lights immediately. I stood by the window, looking out at the city, letting the silence stretch. For years, silence had meant loneliness. Tonight, it felt like space. Room to think. Room to breathe. Room to exist without being assigned a role. My phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. Mom. I let it ring. It stopped. Then again. Mom. Then Megan. Then my father. 3 calls in under a minute. I watched the screen light up and fade, light up and fade. A familiar pattern. Urgency. Expectation. Control. I turned the phone face down. Not tonight. A few minutes later, a message came through. Where are you? You just left in the middle of everything. Another. This is not the time for your attitude, Wendy. Then Megan. Seriously? You just disappeared. I need help with the kids. I stared at the messages for a long time. Not because I didn't know what to say. Because I finally realized I didn't have to say anything at all. I walked to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and sat down at the table. The same table where, just the night before, I had been surrounded by pieces of a future no one else could see. Now it felt closer. Real. Another message. You embarrassed us tonight. That one made me pause. Not because it hurt. Because it didn't. For years, I had carried their version of embarrassment like a weight. Every small mistake magnified. Every boundary labeled as disrespect. But tonight, I had done nothing wrong. I had simply left. And somehow, that was the problem. I picked up my phone and typed a response, then deleted it. Typed again, deleted again. Finally, I locked the screen and set it aside. No explanation would change anything. Not for them. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Not out of habit, out of clarity. Sunlight filtered through the window, soft and quiet. For a moment, I forgot everything. Then it came back. Not as a weight, but as a memory already starting to lose its grip. I reached for my phone. No missed calls, just messages. More than I expected. I opened them slowly. From my mother. I can't believe you would do something like this on such an important night. From my father. You owe your mother an apology. From Megan. This was selfish, even for you. I read each one carefully. No one asked if I was okay. No one wondered why I left. No one questioned what had happened. Just accusations, expectations, demands. I set the phone down. Then I opened my email. There it was. A reply from the gallery. We're thrilled to have you, Wendy. We'll send over the full schedule and preparation details today. I read it twice. Then a third time. A small, quiet smile formed. One I didn't have to hide or explain. For the next few hours, I focused on something I hadn't allowed myself to prioritize before. My work. I reviewed my portfolio, selected pieces, made notes, organized files. Each decision felt deliberate. Mine. Around noon, there was a knock at my door. I froze. No one ever came unannounced. I walked slowly toward the door, my chest tightening. Not from fear, but from the sudden intrusion of something familiar. I already knew who it would be. I opened it. My mother stood there, perfectly dressed, perfectly composed. But her eyes, they weren't warm. They never were when it came to me. "Can I come in?" she asked. It wasn't really a question. I stepped aside. She walked in without waiting for an answer. Her gaze moved around the apartment briefly, taking everything in, the simplicity, the quiet, the absence of anything she would consider impressive. Then she turned to me. "What was that last night?" No greeting, no pause, just confrontation. I didn't respond immediately. I let the silence sit between us. For once, I wasn't rushing to fill it. "You left," she continued, "in the middle of our event. Do you have any idea how that looked?" I met her eyes. "Yes," I said calmly. "I do." She frowned slightly, as if my tone didn't match the script she expected. "Then explain it," she said. I took a breath. Not to defend myself, not to justify anything, just to choose my words carefully. "I realized something," I said. She crossed her arms. "And what's that?" "That I wasn't a guest," I said. "I was part of the service." Her expression tightened. "That's ridiculous." "Is it?" "You're overreacting," she snapped. "We gave you responsibilities because we trust you." I held her gaze. "No," I said quietly. "You gave me responsibilities because you expect me to take them." Her jaw stiffened. "That's what family does." I shook my head slightly. "No," I said. "That's what I've been doing. Alone." She stared at me, something unreadable flickering across her face. Not guilt, not understanding. Something closer to irritation. "You're being dramatic," she said. "All of this because of a simple comment about watching the kids?" I didn't answer right away, because that wasn't the real reason. It never had been. "It wasn't just that," I said finally. "Then what?" she demanded. I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time without trying to earn something from her. Respect, approval, love. "I read your emails," I said. She blinked. "What emails?" "The ones you sent to Aunt Carol," I said. "About me." Silence. Real silence this time. Her expression shifted just slightly. "Enough." "You called me free help," I continued. "You said I was useful because I don't ask for anything." She didn't deny it. She didn't apologize either. Instead, she straightened. "Well," she said, her voice cooling, "that's not entirely untrue, is it?" Something inside me settled even deeper. Not breaking. Not reacting, just settling. "No," I said. "It's not." She seemed almost relieved by that. "As I thought," she said. "So I don't understand why you're making this into something bigger than it is." I nodded slowly. "That's exactly the problem," I said. She frowned again. "What problem?" I met her eyes one last time, not as a daughter asking to be seen, but as someone who finally saw clearly. "That you don't think it's a problem at all." She held my gaze for a moment, as if waiting for me to soften, to step back into the role she understood. I didn't. Something in her expression shifted, not into guilt, but into something colder. Calculation, maybe. Or simply the quiet decision that this conversation wasn't going the way she wanted. "You've always been sensitive," she said finally, brushing invisible dust from her sleeve. "It's exhausting, Wendy. Everything turns into some emotional issue with you." I almost smiled, not because it was funny, because it was predictable. For years I had believed that I was the difficult one, the one who felt too much, asked too little, expected too much. Now, standing in my own apartment, I could see it for what it was. A convenient story, one that kept everything exactly the same. "I'm not asking for anything anymore," I said quietly. She paused. That caught her attention. "What does that mean?" "It means I'm done," I said. The words didn't come out dramatic or loud. They came out steady, final. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Done with what?" "With being available," I said. "With being the one you call when something needs to be handled. With being invisible until I'm useful." "That's absurd," she snapped. "You're part of this family." I shook my head. "No," I said. "I'm part of your system." The silence that followed felt heavier than anything we had said so far. She took a step closer, her voice lowering. "Be careful, Wendy," she said. "You don't just walk away from your family because of hurt feelings." I didn't move. "I'm not walking away because I'm hurt," I said. "I'm walking away because I finally understand." "Understand what?" she demanded. "That nothing changes here," I said. "Not unless I do." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "And what exactly are you planning to do?" she asked. I held her gaze. "I already did it," I said. She frowned. "What are you talking about?" "I accepted the gallery contract," I said. For a second, she didn't react. Then, "A gallery?" she repeated, like the word itself didn't belong in the conversation. What gallery? I've been working as a photographer, I said, for 3 years. The room went still, not because she was impressed, because she hadn't known. How would you even have time for that? She asked sharply. You're always busy with... She stopped. The realization didn't land as understanding. It landed as inconvenience. You've been doing this behind our backs? She said. I almost laughed at the phrasing. Behind your backs? I repeated. No, I've been doing it around your expectations. That's the same thing, she snapped. No, I said calmly. It's not. She turned away for a moment, pacing once across the small space, then back again. This is exactly what I mean, she said. You make decisions without considering how they affect everyone else. I felt something in my chest tighten, but it wasn't doubt. Just recognition. That's interesting, I said. She stopped. What is? That's exactly what you did last night, I said. Her expression hardened. That was different. How? I asked. Because we were planning something for the family, she said. A trip. A celebration. And I wasn't included, I said. You were included, she insisted. In a different way. I held her gaze. You mean as help, I said. She exhaled sharply, clearly losing patience. Someone has to be responsible, she said. Megan has 2 children. She deserves a break. And I don't? I asked. She hesitated, just for a second. But it was enough. You don't have the same responsibilities, she said. I nodded slowly. You're right, I said. I don't. She seemed relieved again, thinking the conversation was turning back into something she could control. That's why it makes sense. That's why I'm choosing something else, I said, cutting in gently. The words landed differently this time, because they weren't defensive. They were decided. Her eyes searched my face, looking for hesitation, for doubt, for the version of me she knew how to manage. She didn't find it. So what? She said finally. You're just going to disappear? Stop showing up? Stop helping? Yes, I said. The simplicity of the answer seemed to unsettle her more than anything else. That's not how this works, she said. It is now, I replied. She stared at me for a long moment. Then she laughed, not kindly. You think you can just build some little hobby into a life? She said. Do you have any idea how unstable that is? It's not a hobby, I said. It's my work. You've never made real money from it, she said quickly. I didn't correct her. Not immediately. Because this wasn't about proving anything. I've made enough, I said. And now I have a contract. She shook her head. This is exactly why we worry about you, she said. You make impulsive decisions based on emotion. I took a breath. Then I said something I had never said to her before. I'm not asking you to understand. That stopped her, completely. I'm informing you, I continued, because you came here, not because I owe you an explanation. The shift in the room was immediate, clear, irreversible. Her expression changed again, not irritation this time, not dismissal. Something sharper. You've changed, she said. Yes, I replied. And you think this is better? She asked. I know it is, I said. She looked around my apartment again, as if searching for evidence to prove me wrong. There's nothing here, she said. I followed her gaze. The simple furniture, the quiet space. The absence of anything designed to impress. Then I looked back at her. "I know," I said. "And you're okay with that?" She pressed. "Yes." She shook her head slowly. "I don't recognize you," she said. I held her gaze. "That makes two of us," I said. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she reached for her bag. "This isn't over," she said. I didn't respond. She moved toward the door, then paused. "You'll regret this," she added. Maybe she believed that. Maybe she needed to. I opened the door for her. "Goodbye, Mom," I said. She hesitated, just for a fraction of a second, like she was expecting me to say something else, to soften it, to fix it. I didn't. She walked out, and this time, I closed the door behind her. Gently, without hesitation. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full. Not with fear, not with doubt, but with something I had never fully felt before. Ownership. Of my space. Of my choices. Of my life. I stood there for a while, my hand still resting on the door. Then I let it fall. And for the first time in 32 years, there was no one left to tell me what to do next. The apartment felt different after she left. Not because anything had changed physically, but because something had finally stopped. The constant anticipation, the quiet tension of waiting for the next demand, the next call, the next reminder of where I stood in their world. It was gone. I walked back to the table and sat down, staring at the photographs spread across the surface. For years, I had worked around my life. Now, for the first time, I could work within it. My phone buzzed again. I didn't rush to pick it up. When I finally did, it wasn't my mother. It was Megan. I almost ignored it. Almost. But something in me wanted to see what she would say, without my mother's voice shaping it. I opened the message. "Mom said you've lost your mind." I let out a quiet breath. Another message followed. "Are you seriously not coming on the trip?" No greeting, no concern, just inconvenience wrapped as disbelief. I typed a response slowly. "No." I watched the words sit there for a second before sending it. Simple. Clear. Done. Her reply came almost instantly. "Wow." Then, "Unbelievable." Then, "Do you know how hard this is for me?" I stared at that line a little longer than the others. Not because it was surprising, because it was familiar. Everything had always been hard for Megan. Everything had always required adjustment from everyone else. I typed again. "I'm sure it is." I paused, then added, "You'll figure it out." I sent it before I could overthink it. There was no anger in the words, no sarcasm, just distance. Her response took longer this time. When it came, it was shorter. "You're being selfish." I read it once. Then I set the phone down. For years, that word would have stayed with me, followed me, made me question everything. Now it felt misplaced, like it didn't belong to me anymore. I stood up and walked to the window again. Outside, the world moved the same way it always had. Cars passing, people walking, lives continuing. Nothing had stopped. Only my role in one small part of it had. Later that afternoon, I received another email from the gallery. This one included details, dates, setup schedules, promotional plans, and one line that caught my attention. "We'd like to feature your story alongside your work." I read it twice. My story. The words felt heavier than they should have, because for most of my life, my story hadn't been mine to tell. It had been shaped, edited, and simplified into something that fit neatly into my family's version of reality. Reliable daughter, helpful sister, low maintenance. I sat down and opened a blank document. The cursor blinked at me. Waiting. For a moment, I didn't type. I just sat there, letting the silence stretch again. Not uncomfortable, just unfamiliar. Then slowly, I began. Not with everything, just with the truth. I spent most of my life being useful. The words looked strange on the screen. Simple, but accurate. I kept going. Not writing for them. Not writing to prove anything. Just writing to understand what I had lived. Hours passed without me noticing. The light outside shifted from afternoon to evening, soft shadows stretching across the room. At some point, my phone buzzed again. This time, I ignored it completely. When I finally stopped writing, I leaned back in my chair, my eyes tired but my mind clearer than it had been in years. I saved the document, not because it was finished, but because it had started. That night, I slept differently. Not perfectly, not peacefully, but without the constant replay of conversations I wished had gone differently, without the quiet dread of what tomorrow might demand from me. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight again, and silence. No messages this time. No missed calls. For a brief second, a small, old part of me wondered why. Then I realized they were waiting. Waiting for me to come back. To apologize. To explain. To return to the version of myself that made everything easier for them. I didn't. Instead, I made coffee, opened my laptop, and continued working. By midday, I received a call from an unfamiliar number. I hesitated before answering. Hello? Hi, is this Wendy? Yes? This is Daniel from the gallery. I just wanted to personally welcome you and go over a few details if you have time. His tone was warm, professional, respectful. It caught me off guard in a way I hadn't expected. Yes, I said. I have time. We spoke for nearly 20 minutes, about the exhibition, about my work, about what I wanted the collection to represent. Not once did he interrupt. Not once did he redirect the conversation toward what was easier or more convenient. He asked questions, and he listened. When the call ended, I sat there for a moment, holding my phone. It was a small thing, a normal interaction, but it felt different. Because I had been treated like someone whose voice mattered. Later that evening, I decided to step outside. Not for errands, not for obligations, just to walk. The air was cooler, the streets quieter than usual. I moved slowly, without a destination, letting myself exist without a task attached to it. At one point, I passed a small group of people gathered outside a restaurant, laughing, talking, sharing something simple. For a moment, I watched them, not with longing, just with observation. Then I kept walking. When I returned home, there was a message waiting. Not from my mother, not from Megan, from my father. We need to talk. I stared at the words for a long time. Short, direct, different from the others. I knew what it meant, or at least what it usually meant. A conversation where I would be expected to listen, to adjust, to find a way to restore balance. But this time, there was no urgency in me, no immediate pull to respond. I set the phone down, and for the first time, I didn't feel like something was about to be taken from me. I left the message unanswered for the rest of the night. Not as a statement, not as a strategy, just because I didn't feel the need to respond. That alone was new. For most of my life, silence from me had always been temporary, something I used to gather the right words before eventually giving in, smoothing things over, restoring whatever tension had been created. But now, silence wasn't a pause, it was a boundary. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual, my mind already clear before my feet even touched the floor. There was no heaviness waiting for me, no replay of what I should have said differently, no dread, just a quiet awareness that something had changed, and it wasn't going back. I made coffee, opened my laptop, and returned to my work, editing photographs, adjusting light, revisiting moments I had captured over the past 3 years, moments no one in my family had ever asked about. There was one image I kept coming back to, a photograph I had taken late one evening, an empty chair near a window, sunlight fading across the fabric, the room half lit, half shadowed. At the time, I had titled it, Waiting. Now, looking at it again, the meaning felt different. Not waiting for someone to arrive, waiting for something to end. Around mid-morning, my phone buzzed again. The same message. We need to talk. No follow-up, no added pressure, just repetition. I stared at it for a moment, then typed a reply. About what? I sent it before I could reconsider. The response came a few minutes later. Yesterday. Of course. I leaned back in my chair, considering it. Not the conversation itself, but the version of it he expected. My father had always been quieter than my mother, less direct, less emotional, but not necessarily more understanding. He didn't raise his voice, he didn't argue loudly, he simply maintained the structure. And I had always been part of that structure. Reliable, predictable, adjustable. Until now. I typed again. I'm working today. It wasn't an excuse, it was the truth. His reply took longer this time, then, this won't take long. I looked at the words carefully. That phrase, I had heard it before. It usually meant the opposite. I placed my phone on the table and let the silence stretch again. Then, after a few minutes, I picked it up and typed one final message. Not today. I sent it. And that was it. No explanation, no apology. Just a decision. The rest of the day passed quietly. I focused on preparing for the exhibition, selecting final images, reviewing layout options, making notes about presentation. Every choice felt intentional, not rushed, not influenced, just mine. By late afternoon, there was another knock at my door. This time, I didn't freeze. I knew who it would be. I walked to the door and opened it. My father stood there, calm, composed, exactly as I expected.
Can I come in?
He asked. Unlike my mother, he waited. I stepped aside. He entered slowly, his eyes moving around the apartment, taking in the same details my mother had, but without commentary. We stood in silence for a moment. Then he turned to me.
You didn't respond.
He said. I did, I replied. He nodded slightly.
Yes,
He said.
you did.
Another pause. Then he sighed, the sound quiet but deliberate.
This situation, he began, has gotten out of hand.
I didn't interrupt.
You leaving like that, he continued. Your mother coming here, the messages. It's unnecessary.
Unnecessary? I repeated.
Yes, he said. This could have been handled differently.
I held his gaze. How? I asked. He hesitated, then chose his words carefully.
By talking first, he said.
I nodded slowly. I've been talking for years, I said. He didn't respond immediately. Instead, he shifted his weight slightly, as if adjusting to something uncomfortable.
That's not the same, he said.
No, I agreed. It's not.
Then what is?
He asked. I took a breath. Not to defend myself. Just to be clear. Being heard, I said. The words settled between us. He looked at me for a long moment, longer than I expected. Then he glanced away briefly, his jaw tightening just slightly.
You're making this bigger than it needs to be,
He said. I almost smiled. That sentence. A quieter version of my mother's. Different tone. Same meaning. I don't think I am, I said. He exhaled again, slower this time.
Your mother didn't mean to upset you,
He said. I know, I replied. That caught him off guard.
You do?
He asked. Yes, I said. That's the point. He frowned slightly.
I don't understand,
He said. She didn't mean anything by it, I explained. Because to her, it's normal. Silence. Real silence. Not avoidance, not dismissal. Just space. For years, I continued, I thought if I explained things better or did more or made fewer problems, it would change how I was treated. He listened, not interrupting, not correcting.
So what changed?
He asked finally. I stopped expecting it to, I said. The honesty of the answer seemed to settle something in him, though not in the way I might have hoped. More like acceptance than agreement.
and walking away is your solution?
He asked. It's my boundary, I said. He considered that, then nodded once, slowly.
I see,
He said, but I wasn't sure he did.
your mother is hurt.
He added. I didn't react.
She feels disrespected.
He continued. I held his gaze. I'm sure she does, I said.
And you don't?
He asked. I felt that way for a long time, I replied. I just didn't have a word for it. He looked at me again, really looked this time. Not at the situation, at me, as if trying to understand how I had become someone he didn't fully recognize.
This changes things,
He said quietly. Yes, I said. It does. Another pause. Then,
what happens now?
He asked. It was the first question that didn't sound like an instruction or an expectation. Just a question. I thought about it, not quickly, not carefully, just honestly. I don't know, I said. And for once, that didn't feel like uncertainty. It felt like possibility. He stood there for a moment longer, as if expecting something else to follow. A compromise, a reassurance, a version of me that would soften the edges of what I had just said. I didn't offer it. Instead, I remained still, letting the silence exist without trying to fix it. He finally nodded, more to himself than to me.
You've made up your mind, he said. It wasn't a question.
Yes, I replied. Another pause. Then he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper.
I wasn't sure if I should bring this,
he said, holding it for a moment before extending it toward me. I hesitated, then took it. It felt ordinary, light, but something about the way he watched me made it feel heavier. What is it? I asked.
Just read it,
he said. I unfolded the paper slowly. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. Then the words settled into focus. It was an email, printed, dated 2 weeks ago. From my mother, to someone named Carol. I recognized the name immediately.
My aunt. I had seen messages like this before,
But not this one. Not this version. I read the first line. I don't know what we'd do without Wendy. She handles everything. I frowned slightly, continuing. She's reliable, doesn't complain, and honestly, it's easier this way. Megan has enough on her plate, and Wendy doesn't really have anything going on. I felt something shift in my chest. Not sharp, not painful, just clear. I kept reading. She's not like Megan. No ambition, no real direction, but she's useful, and that matters. The word sat there. Useful. Again. But this time it wasn't hidden. It wasn't softened. It was direct. I lowered the paper slowly. My father watched me carefully.
I thought you should see it, he said.
I looked up at him. Why? I asked. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he exhaled, the sound heavier than before.
Because you were right,
he said quietly. The words didn't land the way I expected. There was no relief in them, no satisfaction, just acknowledgement. And? I asked. He met my eyes.
And I didn't realize how far it had gone, he said.
I held his gaze. You didn't see it, I said. He nodded once.
No,
he admitted.
I didn't.
Silence settled again, but it felt different this time. Less tense, more honest. What do you want me to do? He asked. The question surprised me. Not because of the words, because of the direction. For the first time, he wasn't telling me what should happen. He was asking. I looked down at the paper in my hands, then back at him. I don't want you to do anything, I said. He frowned slightly.
That's not realistic,
he said. It is for me, I replied. He studied my face, searching for something. Uncertainty, maybe. Or a sign that this was temporary. He didn't find it.
You're still part of this family,
he said. I didn't argue. I know, I said.
But?
He prompted. But I'm not playing the same role anymore, I said. He nodded slowly, as if absorbing that.
And if your mother can't accept that?
He asked. I didn't answer right away, because that was the real question. The one everything else led to. I'm not asking her to, I said finally. His expression shifted slightly.
That's not how families work,
he said. I almost smiled. That's how mine will, I replied. The distinction was small, but it mattered. A lot. He looked around the apartment again, then back at me.
You're serious about this,
he said. Yes.
And the gallery?
He asked. Yes. He nodded. Another pause. Then he did something I hadn't expected. "Show me," he said. I blinked. "What?" "Your work," he clarified. "If it's something you're building your life around, I'd like to see it." I hesitated, not because I didn't want to, because I wasn't sure what it meant. For years, I had wanted this, his attention, his interest, his acknowledgement. Now that it was there, it felt unfamiliar. Careful. I walked to my laptop and opened my portfolio. Then I turned the screen toward him. "These are some of the pieces selected for the exhibition," I said. He stepped closer, leaning slightly to get a better look. For a while, he didn't speak. He just looked. Image after image. Light, shadow, moments captured in stillness. Emotion held quietly within frames. I watched him, not the screen, trying to understand what he was seeing, what he was thinking. Finally, he straightened.
These are...
He began, then paused.
different.
He finished. I nodded.
They're not what I expected.
He added. "I know," I said. He looked at me again.
You did all of this?
He asked. "Yes." Another pause, then quietly.
You're good.
The words were simple, not dramatic, not emotional, but they landed heavier than anything he had said so far, because they weren't about obligation or expectation. They were about recognition. I didn't respond immediately. I just nodded once. "Thank you," I said. He looked back at the screen briefly, then stepped away.
I won't pretend I understand all of this,
he said. "I'm not asking you to," I replied. He nodded.
I know.
We stood there for a moment longer. Then he moved toward the door.
I'll talk to your mother,
he said. I didn't respond, not because I didn't hear him, because I wasn't sure what that would change. He paused at the door, his hand resting on the handle.
You're not wrong,
he said without turning around. Then he opened the door and left. I stood there for a long time after he was gone. The paper is still in my hand. The room quiet again. But something had shifted. Not everything, not completely, but enough. I looked down at the printed email one more time, then folded it carefully. Not as something to hold on to, but as something I no longer needed to question. For years, I had wondered if I was imagining it, if I was overreacting, if I was the problem. Now I had proof, not just in words, but in clarity. And for the first time, that clarity didn't hurt. It grounded me. I placed the folded paper on the table beside my laptop and sat down slowly, letting the quiet settle again. It wasn't the same silence as before. This one carried something new. Not tension, not uncertainty, just a steady sense of direction. I turned back to my work, adjusting a few images, reviewing notes from the gallery, organizing the final sequence for the exhibition. Each photograph now felt like more than just a piece of art. It felt like evidence, not of what I had been through, but of what I had built in spite of it. By evening, I received another email from the gallery confirming the exhibition date. 3 weeks. That was all the time left. A clear timeline, a fixed point ahead. For the first time, a countdown in my life wasn't about losing something. It was about stepping into something. I wrote the date down and placed it on the wall near my desk. Not as pressure, as focus. The next few days passed in a rhythm I had never experienced before. Mornings filled with work, afternoons with planning, Evenings with quiet reflection. No interruptions. No sudden demands. No last-minute responsibilities dropped into my hands without warning. It felt unfamiliar at first. Then it began to feel normal. On the fourth day, my phone rang again. My mother. I watched the screen light up. This time, I didn't feel tension or urgency, just a decision waiting to be made. After a moment, I answered. Hello? There was a pause on the other end, as if she hadn't expected me to pick up. Wendy, she said, her voice controlled, measured. We need to talk. I leaned back in my chair. We've already talked, I said. No, she replied quickly. We haven't. Not properly. I didn't respond immediately, because I knew what properly meant to her. It meant resolution on her terms. I'm listening, I said. Another pause. Then, your father spoke to me, she said. I waited. He showed me the email, she continued. My eyes moved briefly to the folded paper on the table. I assumed he would, I said. Her tone shifted slightly, not softer, but less certain. That was taken out of context, she said. Of course it was. I didn't interrupt. You know how conversations are, she continued. Things get simplified, misunderstood. I let the silence stretch, not to challenge her, but to give her space to say what she needed to say, without me filling it for her. I never meant for you to feel less than, she added. The words felt carefully chosen, measured, but something about them still felt distant. I know, I said. That seemed to catch her off guard again. You do? She asked. Yes, I replied. You just didn't think about it at all. Another silence. This one longer, heavier. That's not fair, she said finally. It's accurate, I replied. Her breath came through the phone sharper this time. You're turning this into something it's not, she said. We've always supported you. I didn't react to the word. Supported. It sounded right. Until you looked at it closely. You've relied on me, I said calmly. That's not the same thing. That's what families do, she insisted. I closed my eyes for a moment, then opened them again. Families also listen, I said. She didn't respond, so I continued. They notice when something isn't working, I added. They don't wait until someone walks away to ask why. Her voice softened slightly, not with warmth, but with something closer to restraint. So what do you want from me? She asked. The question echoed the one my father had asked, but it felt different, less open, more conditional. I don't want anything, I said. That's not realistic, she replied immediately. It is, I said, because I've already changed what I needed to. And what about us? She asked. There it was. Not concern, not understanding. Position. I took a breath, then answered honestly. That depends on you, I said. Silence. Then, what does that mean? It means I'm not coming back to the same dynamic, I said. If we have a relationship, it has to be different. She didn't respond right away. I could almost hear her thinking, measuring, weighing what that would require. That's a big shift, she said finally. Yes, I replied. And you expect everything to just adjust? She asked. No, I said. I expect it to either adjust
or not continue the same way. The words settled between us, clear, unavoidable. "You're giving ultimatums now," she said, a trace of sharpness returning. "No," I said calmly. "I'm setting boundaries." Another pause. Then, "This isn't how we raised you," she said. I almost smiled. "I know," I replied. "And you think this is better?" she pressed. "I know it is," I said. Her voice went quiet. Not gone, just quieter. "Your father said you're doing some kind of exhibition," she said after a moment. "Yes." "And that's what this is about?" she asked. "No," I said. "That's what I'm moving toward." Silence again. Then, unexpectedly, "When is it?" The question caught me off guard, not because it was supportive, because it was neutral. "In 3 weeks," I said. She didn't respond immediately. Then, "You've been doing this for a while?" she asked. 3 years, I replied. Another pause, longer this time. "Why didn't you tell us?" she asked. I let out a small breath. "I tried," I said.
It just didn't matter enough to you to notice.
That landed. I could feel it, not as acceptance, but as something she couldn't easily dismiss. "I see," she said quietly. For the first time in the conversation, there was no sharpness, no correction, just acknowledgement. Small, incomplete, but real. "I'm not asking you to understand everything," I said, "just to understand that things are different now." She didn't argue, not immediately. "I'll think about it," she said. It wasn't an apology, it wasn't agreement, but it wasn't rejection either. "Okay," I replied. Another silence. Then, "You should have told me before you left," she added, almost as an afterthought. I considered that, then answered honestly. "I did," I said, "just not in words you were listening for." She didn't respond to that. "Take care of yourself," she said finally. The words sounded unfamiliar coming from her, not natural, but not forced either. "You too," I replied.
The call ended. I set the phone down slowly. Not analyzing, not replaying, just letting it be. Not resolved, but no longer one-sided. And that alone changed everything. I sat there for a long time after the call ended, my hand resting lightly on the table, my eyes unfocused. Not because I was overwhelmed, because I wasn't. For once, nothing felt tangled. No confusion, no second guessing. Just a quiet understanding that something had shifted, not perfectly, not completely, but enough to move forward without dragging everything behind me. I stood up and walked toward the wall where I had pinned the exhibition date. 3 weeks. Now less. Time felt different when it belonged to me. I picked up a pen and began writing small notes beneath the date. Final selections, printing deadlines, framing decisions, layout adjustments. Every line was clear. Every task connected to something I cared about, not something I was assigned. That night, I worked later than usual. Not out of pressure, out of focus. The kind that doesn't drain you. The kind that builds something. Around midnight, I finally stopped. Not because I had to, because I had done enough. That alone felt new. I turned off the lights and stood for a moment in the quiet apartment, letting the stillness settle around me. There was no noise waiting for me. No expectations pressing against the edges of the day. Just space. The next morning, I woke up with the same clarity. Routine had started to form, not one built on obligation, but on intention. Coffee, work, review, adjust, move forward. Days passed like that. Steady, focused, uninterrupted. Until one afternoon, about a week before the exhibition, I received a message I hadn't expected. From Megan. I stared at her name for a moment before opening it. "When is your thing?" I read it twice. No sarcasm, no accusation, just a question. Simple, direct. I typed a response. "Next Saturday." There was a pause. Then, "Where?" I hesitated for a second,
Then sent the gallery address. Another pause. Longer this time. I put my phone down and went back to my work. I didn't expect anything else. But a few minutes later, another message appeared. "Can I come?" I stared at the screen. Not because I didn't know the answer, because I didn't know what the question meant. Was it curiosity? Obligation? Something else? For years, I had adjusted my answers based on what would keep things smooth, keep things easy. But now, I answered honestly. Yes. I didn't add anything else. No explanation, no reassurance. Just permission. Her reply came after a minute. "Okay, that was it. No emotion, no follow-up." But it didn't feel negative. It felt open, in a way I wasn't used to. The rest of the week moved quickly. Final prints arrived, frames were delivered, the gallery space was prepared. For the first time, I saw my work not as individual pieces, but as a collection. A story. My story. The night before the exhibition, I returned home later than usual, exhausted but steady. I stood in front of the mirror for a moment, looking at my reflection. Not searching for flaws, not adjusting anything. Just looking. There was something different in my expression. Not stronger, not harder, just clearer. The next day arrived quietly. No dramatic start, no overwhelming rush, just a calm sense of movement towards something I had built. I arrived at the gallery early. The space was already set. Soft lighting, clean walls. My photographs displayed in careful sequence. People began to arrive slowly. Strangers, guests, viewers. Some moved quickly, some paused longer. Some stood in front of certain pieces, reading the descriptions, looking closer. I stayed near the edge of the room at first, watching, not hiding, just observing. A few people approached me, asked questions, shared thoughts. Not about what I had done for others, but about what I had created. Each conversation felt different, balanced, equal, not transactional. As the room filled, I noticed movement near the entrance. I looked up. Megan. She stood there for a moment, scanning the room, uncertain. Then her eyes found me. For a second, neither of us moved. Then she walked in. Slowly, taking in the space, the walls, the images. She didn't come directly to me. Instead, she moved through the gallery, stopping, looking, reading, spending time with each piece in a way I hadn't expected. I watched her quietly, not analyzing, just observing. Eventually, she reached the photograph I had once titled Waiting. She stood there longer than anywhere else. Her expression shifted slightly. Not dramatically, but enough. Something in her posture softened. After a moment, she turned and walked toward me. "You took all of these?" she asked. Her voice was quieter than usual. "Yes," I said. She looked around again. "I didn't know," she said. I nodded. "I know." She hesitated, then, "They're good," she added. The word felt simple, but honest. "Thank you," I said. Another pause, then she glanced at me. "Mom's not coming," she said. I didn't react. "I didn't think she would," I replied. "She said she's not ready," Megan added, her tone shifting slightly on the last words. I nodded once. "That's okay," I said. Megan looked at me for a moment, like she was trying to understand something she hadn't fully seen before. "You really left," she said. It wasn't judgment. It was realization. "Yes," I said. "And you're not coming back?" she asked. I held her gaze. "Not the same way," I replied. She nodded slowly, then looked around again. At the space, at the people, at the life that existed here, separate from everything she had known me as. "I get it," she said quietly. I didn't respond. Not because I disagreed, because I didn't need to define it. She stayed for a while longer, moving through the gallery again, looking differently this time. Before she left, she stopped near me once more. "I'll tell Mom about this," she said. I nodded. "Okay." She hesitated. Then, "You should have done this sooner." I almost smiled. "Maybe," I said. Then she left. The evening continued. More people, more conversations, more moments of quiet recognition. Not loud, not overwhelming, just steady. Real. By the end of the night, as the gallery began to empty, I stood alone for a moment in the center of the room, surrounded by everything I had built. Not perfectly, not easily, but honestly. My phone buzzed. I looked at the screen. A message. From my mother. I opened it. I heard it went well. I stared at the words for a moment. No apology, no explanation, just acknowledgement. I typed a reply. "Yes." I paused, then added, "It did." I sent it, then put my phone away, not waiting for a response, not needing one. I looked around the room one last time, at the photographs, at the quiet space they filled, at the story they told without asking for permission. And in that moment, I understood something clearly. I hadn't left forever. I had simply stopped staying where I didn't belong. The gallery lights dimmed slightly as the staff began their closing routine, soft footsteps echoing across the polished floor. People filtered out slowly, their voices fading into the night outside. I stayed behind. Not because I needed to, because I wanted to. For the first time, there was no urgency pulling me away from a moment that mattered to me. I walked along the wall, stopping in front of each photograph again. This time not as the creator, but as someone seeing the full story together. The empty chair, the fading light, the quiet rooms, the faces I had captured in between other people's expectations of me. They no longer felt like fragments. They felt like proof of a life I had built when no one was looking. A soft voice broke the silence behind me. "You're still here." I turned. Daniel stood a few steps away, hands loosely folded, his expression calm but observant. Yes, I said. He nodded, looking around the gallery.
It's rare, he said, that an opening night feels this grounded.
I glanced at him. Grounded? I repeated. He gave a small, thoughtful smile.
People usually rush through, he said. They perform appreciation. They chase meaning. But tonight felt different.
I looked back at the photographs. It didn't feel like performance to me, I said.
No,
he agreed quietly.
It didn't.
A pause settled between us. Not awkward, just natural. Then he added,
There's something else I wanted to mention.
I waited. He gestured lightly toward one of the pieces near the center wall.
That photograph, he said. The one with the empty chair.
I followed his gaze. Yes, I said. We had 3 different collectors ask about it tonight, he said. One of them wants to acquire it for a permanent installation. I blinked slightly. Not because I didn't expect interest, but because hearing it spoken aloud made it real in a different way. I see, I said. He watched my reaction carefully.
You don't seem surprised, he noted.
I considered that. I think I stopped being surprised when I started making work for myself instead of approval, I said. He nodded slowly, as if that answer made sense to him.
That's usually when the work starts becoming valuable, he said.
I didn't respond immediately. Not because I disagreed, because I realized I wasn't measuring value the same way anymore. It wasn't about demand or recognition. It was about alignment. A few more staff members passed by, gently dismantling small details of the evening. Glasses being collected, lights being adjusted, chairs being realigned. The event was ending, but I didn't feel like it was disappearing. It felt like it was settling. Daniel glanced at his watch, then back at me.
You should take a moment before you leave,
he said. I nodded slightly. I already am, I replied. He gave a short, approving look.
I'll leave you to it,
he said. Then he walked away, leaving me alone again in the space. I turned back to the wall, and something about the quiet now felt different. Not empty, not heavy, just complete. My phone vibrated softly in my pocket. I hesitated before checking it. A new message. From my father. I opened it.
Proud of you.
3 words. Simple, direct, unadorned. I stared at them for a long time. Not because they changed anything, but because they confirmed something I had already begun to understand. Recognition doesn't always arrive when you need it. Sometimes it arrives when you no longer depend on it. I didn't reply immediately. Instead, I put the phone back into my pocket and looked around the gallery one final time. The last guests had left. The staff were finishing their work quietly in the background. The room felt like it belonged to memory now. Not activity, not expectation. Memory. I walked toward the center of the gallery and stood there for a moment, letting everything settle into place inside me. The version of me that had stayed silent for so long. The version that had learned to adapt. The version that had finally chosen to stop. They all felt like parts of the same story now. Not contradictions, not mistakes, just layers. The door to the gallery creaked slightly as someone stepped back inside. I turned.
Megan. She stood near the entrance, holding her coat loosely in one hand. I thought you left, she said. I stayed a bit longer, I replied. She walked in slowly, looking around the now empty space. It's different without people, she said. Yes, I agreed. She stopped near one of the photographs again. This one, she said, pointing softly. I keep coming back to it. It was the image of the dim room, the fading light, the empty chair. I noticed, I said. She glanced at me. I didn't understand it at first, she admitted. And now? I asked. She hesitated, then shrugged slightly. Now it feels familiar, she said. I nodded but didn't push further. Some understandings didn't need explanation. We stood there for a moment in silence. Not tense, not resolved, just present. Then she spoke again. Mom saw some of the pictures online, she said. I looked at her. And? I asked. She didn't say much, Megan replied. Just that it looked professional. A faint smile crossed my face. That's something, I said. Megan gave a small, uncertain laugh. Yeah, she said. I guess. Another pause. Then she added quietly, she's not angry anymore. I didn't react immediately. Not because I doubted it, because I didn't know what it meant for me. I'm not either, I said finally. Megan looked at me for a moment longer, then nodded. Okay, she said. Simple. Accepted. No debate. She glanced at the remaining photographs one last time, then back at me. So what happens now? She asked. It was the same question my father had asked. But this time it didn't feel like pressure. It felt like curiosity. I looked around the gallery, at the work, at the space, at everything that had been created from something no one had paid attention to for years. I keep going, I said. Megan nodded. That sounds like you, she said. Then she stepped back toward the door. She paused there for a second. Wendy, she said. I looked at her. I didn't know, she said simply. I held her gaze. I know, I replied. She nodded once, then turned and left. The door closed softly behind her. And I was alone again. But it didn't feel like absence. It felt like completion. I walked slowly toward the photograph of the empty chair one last time. And for the first time since everything had begun, I didn't see what was missing from it. I saw what it meant. Not waiting, not loss, but space. For something new to exist. I stood there until the gallery lights dimmed completely, and when I finally stepped outside into the night air, I didn't feel like someone who had left. I felt like someone who had arrived.